Another flagship versus mid-range fight, Pixel 9 versus Pixel 8a. How big is the difference, and is Pixel 8a a great alternative? Let the battle begin. Today, another mid-range versus flagship battle between the latest Pixel phones, and I bet this will be a really good one, Pixel 9 versus Pixel 8a. For the last few days, it's so cloudy, so we failed to show you the blue sky, but definitely a lot of images will have blue shades on it, so we will be able to compare them. We are utilizing all sensors from the ultra-wide to the main sensor, and even the digital crop to see if there's any difference, and also shooting macro. Today we will ask the question, how big is the difference between these two phones, and is Pixel 8a a good alternative? Let's start with color profile and saturation, and the first thing I notice is how close both phones are. I mean, honestly, on a blind test, and if you're just looking on the images on a smaller screen like a smartphone, I feel you wouldn't notice the difference. I failed almost 30% of the time naming the right phone, but there are a few differences that are given that I will point out and discuss to know which phone is which. On a darker environment, you will notice that Pixel 9 is brighter than Pixel 8a. It also has a neutral tone or cooler white balance than the competition that also affects the colors, giving the image a more natural looking tone. And if you notice on portraits and macros that it has a shallower depth of field, if you put the subject closer or trigger the portrait mode on people, it also exposes the shadows better looking in the darker background like the decors or any black part of the image. It also manages the highlights better, so if you look on the strong light source, you will see more information on Pixel 9, or it blends really well with the image. The surface of the subject are detailed on Pixel 9, it tends to smoothen it a little bit, which is nicer on the skin. Later we will talk about the big difference of portrait mode. It also has a better smoother background blur than the competition. You would see bigger and softer bokeh balls on Pixel 9. And looking at all sensors from the ultra-wide to the main sensor, you will notice that Pixel 9 has a wider field of view or FOV than Pixel 8a. Now, the newer Pixel mid-range is no slouch. Again, if you post the images on social media without knowing which phone is which, it's really hard to tell the difference between these two phones because the colors are pretty similar. The mid-range Pixel 8a has a warmer white balance, and it also affects the colors red, orange, yellow, and pink. And although we don't have the sky because of the cloudy condition, I noticed that the color temperature of blue, green, and gray are not affected. If you look on the surface of the subject, I would probably say it has more details than Pixel 9. Also, on portrait mode might be a bad thing or good depending on your preference. Looking quickly on the specification for those spec junkie, Pixel 8a has 64 megapixel versus 50 megapixel of Pixel 9 on the main shooter, but Pixel 9 has 48 megapixel versus the 13 megapixel on the ultra-wide. Both can shoot 4K video, and checking the selfie really quick, 10.5 megapixel on Pixel 9 and 13 megapixel on Pixel 8a, but the flagship Pixel 9 can shoot up to 4K at 60 FPS. Now, going back to this comparison test, if you check the field of view, it's more punchy on Pixel 8a, both ultra-wide and the main sensor, so you will fit more on Pixel 9, especially on tighter situation. This is Pixel 9 in 4K 30 FPS using the selfie camera. How good is the performance of the selfie? I like three things about this phone. First is the design, the revamped camera module. There's also Add Me features on the camera, and also slightly better performance on the processor. Now let's talk about portrait mode, and believe me, it's not like they're producing the same portraits because they are the same phones that were manufactured 2024. There's a big difference between the two. I think this is the biggest difference of Pixel 9 and Pixel 8a. To begin with, the biggest difference between these two phones is subject separation or cutout. Pixel 9 is so much better than Pixel 8a in terms of cutting out the subject. You will see this on busy background. Pixel 8a is inconsistent, while Pixel 9 detects the edges really well, like the ones from Samsung and Apple. Another thing that you would notice is the background. It is creamier and softer on the new Pixel 9, while it's busier and less blurred on the mid-range competition. Again, it's a matter of taste, but for me, I would prefer the bigger bokeh balls on Pixel 9 compared to Pixel 8a. The new flagship has a warmer skin tone. It's more inviting than Pixel 8a on some shots. It's like the ones you would see on the Apple competition. It's a little bit yellowish on my taste, maybe depending on the skin color as well. Mine is a little bit brown. If the image is warmer, then I would look super yellow on the image. But for complexion like my wife, I think this will work really well. The exposure also plays a vital role on portrait shots, as you would see better exposed photos and subject on Pixel 9 looking at the darker areas or the black shirt. Well, Pixel 8a again is inconsistent on the cutout, but still performs really well with detailed portrait shots. I hated some of the shots because of the details. My face and skin looks pigmented, which is unrealistic if you punched in. It's like coming from a cheap phone. But the neutral skin tone doesn't hurt me that much because it provides natural looking skin, and you also have a better contrast or stronger contrast on this phone, making the subject pops out a little bit more. Now going for the selfie shot, they have the same tendencies, warmer on Pixel 9 and cooler on Pixel 8a. The level of details on my face and skin are almost the same, but the biggest difference is the field of view. It's a little bit punchy on the new flagship Pixel 9. Now in terms of night shots, I think you would love any of these two phones. I feel like they're almost the same in terms of color reproduction and exposure. The images are not so bright like the competition, but they provide you a feeling that you're shooting at night because of the stronger contrast, but still provides you a lot of details on darker areas of the image. You will see good amount of details on the trees and an even surface, and it also manages the highlights really well looking at the lights. I think the only difference is exposure. Nitpicking on both phones, you have better exposure on the ultra-wide sensor of Pixel 9, and it's almost the same level of details and white balance on the main sensor, but if you go to the zoom, there's a little bit more information on the new Pixel 9. This is Pixel 8a using the selfie camera in 4K 30 FPS, same as the selfie camera earlier of Pixel 9. How's the performance? I like three things about this phone. It has the same flagship performance because of the Tensor chip Gen 3. It has the same size as Pixel 9. And also you can find it cheaper online because of the discounted price. Let's talk about some more detailed information about both phones. And on Pixel 8a, I noticed the stripes when pointing the phone on a strong light source. It also affects the output. While testing this on Pixel 9, there's no issue pointing the phone on a strong light source, so the output is okay. Now checking the difference between these two phones, the flagship Pixel 9 has macro capability, so you can shoot those lovely close-up shots, and there's none for Pixel 8a. Also looking who manages the highlights better, if you look at the lamp, you would see details on Pixel 9, it's an owl, but it's all blown out on Pixel 8a. Now onto the similarities, if you look at the sharpness using the ultra-wide sensor, it's almost the same, just a difference in white balance. The main sensor is also the same in terms of the sharpness, and if you go to the 8x zoom, both phones has really good sharpness too. And lastly, details, the 12 megapixel JPEG battle, and if you zoom into the image, you would notice that both phones are detailed, maybe a little bit detailed on Pixel 8a, but they're almost the same. We are starting with the video zoom test. So this is the ultra-wide sensor. Look at the details on the buildings. Now we're moving to the main sensor. Look at the difference in colors. I think a little bit vibrant on Pixel 9. And we also have the 2x. Now going to the farthest zoom, you have 5x on Pixel 8a, and you have 7x on Pixel 9. This is the stabilization test, starting with the ultra-wide lens in 4K 30 FPS, and they both have the same jerkiness while running. Now going to the main sensor, again in 4K 30 FPS, same with the ultra-wide lens. I think they have identical stabilization on the main shooter. Selfie is no different in 4K recording. I think they look the same in terms of video quality and stabilization. Both can shoot 1080p slow motion, and in terms of sharpness, I think Pixel 8a has a little bit of edge on this. This is the low light video recording, Pixel 8a versus Pixel 9. You can see noise on both phones. I think just a difference in white balance, a little reddish on Pixel 8a. But the level of noise is almost the same. Now we go to the main sensor. So you have a smoother video on Pixel 9, but you have a little bit of more information on Pixel 8a. Looking at that building, you can see that there's more information on Pixel 8a. But it's cleaner on Pixel 9. Now going to the 2 times. Again, you have more information on Pixel 8a and smoother video on Pixel 9. I think all in all, with everything it offers, from the great portrait mode, some camera features like Add Me, and less baggy camera overall, Pixel 9 obviously wins this comparison. But if you can make some compromise about the advantages of Pixel 9, then the mid-range Pixel 8a is still a great alternative.